Hi everyone, my name is Dmitry and in this video I will show you my journey for 100 days in the game Valheim. If you have never heard of Valheim, Valheim is a Viking-themed survival adventure game where we play as one of Odin's greatest warriors who has been handpicked by the Valkyrie and sent to the world of Valheim. The goal is to kill epic mystical monsters that pose a threat to the world tree. So, grab your favorite drink and food because I will take you on this very epic journey. The first day started rough where I was dropped by a bird named Hugin into the middle of 6 large stones, each of which turned out to represent B. What does this disturbing people say indicates the bosses in this game? Starting with the first boss, Tyr. Then I started exploring the surrounding area to gather resources such as stone, wood, flint, and raspberry. I also made my first weapon, a club. With this weapon, I am now safe to survive the attacks of enemies in this forest. And on this first day I focused on finding a strategic location to build a base camp, the first characteristic of which is of course the land must be flat and near the sea. That is my favorite location to build a base. On my journey looking for a good location, I found many things. Starting from abandoned houses, strange stone structures, and finally I found a slightly damaged house. Since I had found the base, I immediately started to plant some trees. After that, I immediately repaired the house to live in temporarily. The second day I started by making a mainstay weapon, namely the flint knife, which I will use a lot until I fight the boss and cook the meat I got during yesterday's exploration. After preparing food, I decided to explore again and I found another abandoned village. Coincidentally, there was a beehive there. I tried to take it carefully here so as not to get stung, and this beehive gives us honey and a queen bee, where we can make the queen bee behave again later at the base. Then I also wanted to hunt deer by sneaking and luckily I managed to kill 2 deer close together with just 1 hit. Exploration again. I found 2 beehives here. Well, instead of attacking up close and getting stung, I found a smart method, which was to destroy nearby buildings. After a long exploration, I decided to go home. When I got home, I immediately sorted the items and cooked the meat I got while also making new items like seals, flint axes, and hoe. After that, I went straight to bed. On the 3rd to 5th day, I started working to build a new house here, starting with leveling the ground, using hoe and then making the foundation for the new house. And to be honest, I'm not really good at making good houses. My creativity when it comes to enguling is 0. And as you can see, it took me 3 days to build a house and the results were also not very good. But at least it was still livable. There was a room for me to sleep, a chest to store items, and a place to make things. And outside the house, I made 3 beehives that I got from the exploration earlier. On the 6th day, I was still focused on making a good house, starting with making chopping blocks, which is an upgrade from the workbench and making my own place to cook food. Then I continued exploring again, hunting wild boar and most importantly hunting deer. On the 7th day, I continued exploring and focused on hunting deer this time. After getting some loot from the deer, I went home and made a helmet to add armor and also made an R which functions to upgrade our workbench. On the 8th day, I was already preparing to fight the first boss in this game, namely. Therefore, I went to the summoning altar with 3 deer heads and summoned it. This Eikthyr boss is already very scary name. It turns out that when fought, the difficulty is inversely proportional to this boss. You could say it's really easy to fight. Although he also has to admit, some of his attacks are cool. There are a total of 3 attacks ranging from close range attacks, releasing lightning from his antlers to area attacks covered in lightning. Even so, this is just a big deer, WA, and I can still handle it. Although hit by some attacks that are quite fatal, but in the end I managed to defeat this boss. After defeating the giant deer, I got 2 new items, namely Cedar's Antler and Hardler. Here I brought the deer antler to where the monolin stones were at the beginning. And I got Tyr's power for a second. His power itself reduces stamina consumption when we run and jump. Then I went home and made a new item, a pickaxe. Yup, I only got to mining after fighting the first boss. So you can guess the rest of the 8th day I spent leveling the ground near the house. On the 9th day after defeating the boss and making the pickaxe, I started exploring a new area called the Black Forest, a place where strong enemies gather. All I did in the Black Forest was play deposit games. After that I went home and made a deer hide game. After that I returned to the Black Forest to explore further. Not long after that I found a strange building guarded by a skeleton which when I entered it turned out to be a burial chamber. This burial chamber is where treasure is stored and every corridor is guarded by skeletons. In this place I also got a lot of new items like yellow mushrooms, charlinks, and I even found a monolith that pointed me to the next boss, the Elder. And luckily, the place wasn't too far away. And yeah, after leaving the bell chamber, I went home and upgraded some items like armor and went straight to bed. On the 10th day, I made a smelter and charcoal kiln using the smelting core I got from the burial chamber. And the function of these 2 buildings is to melt the tin deposits I got and make coal from wood. And yeah, most of the 10th day I spent melting deposits, improving the house, and leveling the surrounding land. Day 11, my next goal was to explore the Black Forest again and look for the deposit suitcase. And make no mistake, there are a lot of enemies in the Black Forest, to the point that in this place and also in the Black Forest, I found many new items like carrot seeds and blueberries. Feeling like I had enough exploration, I went to the deposit suitcase I found and made a small camp near it. The problem is to repair the pig and make a camp around the deposit suitcase so that it won't be disturbed by the Great Dwarf, because the Grey Dwarf is afraid of fire. Before mining the suitcase, I decided to go home, cut down some trees and make a coal, then sleep. On the 12th day, it was time to go to the Black Forest and mine the suitcase. Well, on the way to the Black Forest, I was intercepted by this giant blue creature which turned out to be a troll. Since I'm a real pro, so I tried to fight it, right? Although it took a while, I managed to defeat it. Wow, who would have thought, right? Then I started mining the deposit suitcase. Here I also have an effective way to mine this suitcase by mining the edges first so that nothing is missed. After that, I started mining the suitcase. Here on the 13th day, I was enjoying mining. Suddenly a raid happened. Like it or not, I had to finish this raid first. It took a few minutes to finally complete this raid 1 event. After that, what to do? Of course, continue playing to get the deposit suitcase here. On the 14th day, I just finished mining this deposit suitcase. It did take a little time to mine all the suitcases in this same place. And you can see I got almost a full chest for the deposit suitcase. But after that the torture continued where I couldn't carry all these suitcases right away because I would get sore. Like it or not, I had to go back and forth more than 3 times to be able to move all the suitcases. And while I was moving these deposit suitcases, I didn't forget to melt the suitcases I had brought. On the 15th day, my bus was attacked again by this Black Forest army. So I had to finish it once again. Which in the end I died because of Samon, who likes to attack with poison. I responded again and finally completed the event rate. And with the suitcases and tin I had, I managed to create a new station here, namely the forge. Well, with this forge I can make bronze ingots, and I made bronze first here because in order to be able to cut down white trees, namely fine. With fine I finally managed to make a portal, although it is still useless for now. And also here I made a new shield, namely the bronze seal. And with the remaining bronze, I was finally able to make my first boat that was worth riding. And not only the boat, I also made a cart that was very useful for carrying a lot of stuff like the deposit suitcase. Well, with this cart I was bored to go back to the Black Forest to mine the tin deposit because there was a shortage of tin. So, I mined some of the teams here and ended up dying again after being slapped by the Great War Fraxasa. On the 16th day, I went back to the Black Forest to get my stuff and started mining tin again, which I unknowingly managed to collect quite a lot. So I decided to go home and start melting all the teams. While waiting for the deposit to finish processing, I decided to immediately sail exploring the ocean. Luckily for me here, the wind direction was just right. And my main goal in this ocean or sea was to look for the Leviathan creature. Well, this Leviathan apparently doesn't attack us, whack. He's a passive type of creature in the form of a floating rock. Well, after a few minutes of exploring the sea, I suddenly saw the rock. So, I immediately parked the boat and started mining this white material called chitin. Well, this chitin is the material I need to make a cool knife weapon. After mining some chitin here, I managed to collect around 30 before the Leviathan finally dwindled, and since it was already night, I decided to go home. It was the 17th day and I just arrived home after sailing quite far. Well, when I got home, I immediately made a good knife weapon, the Abyssal Razor and the Abyssal Harpoon. Where the Abyssal Razor would be my main weapon to fight enemies in the future. After making a new weapon, my next destination was to the second boss's place, the Elder, and it happened to be close, so it didn't take long to get there. And not only that, on the way to the Elder, I accidentally found this merchant named Halder. Since I was also in the Black Forest, I also looted Burl Chamber to get a Surling core. And after looting, I created another portal to be able to easily teleport home. Well, when I got home, I made another new weapon here, the Finewood bow, and went straight to sleep. On the 18th day, I returned to the Black Forest, with the goal this time to find a troll and defeat it, where I could craft armor from this troll height. Therefore, I searched for and defeated it. After defeating one troll, I was a little surprised. Who would have thought that this abyssal razor weapon could one-hit trolls? It was beyond reason. After defeating at least 2 trolls, I was able to craft new armor here. Although incomplete, only the helmet was left. And the rest of the 8th day I just leaned on a white tree and then slept. On the 19th day, I started by crafting new items such as bronze pickaxes, bronze mash, and cultivators. Well, with this cultivator, I can finally farm, make adds unfull which functions to upgrade the forge. Coincidentally, there are also some carrot seeds that I got from the Black Forest, so I became a farmer for a while here. Continued with mining several more deposit teams, melting, and sleeping. On the 20th day, I started by crafting a Eikthyr which functions to make higher quality food and also made a fermenter as well. Well, the function of this fermenter is to make potions. Continued by looting several more burial chambers. And with all the coins I got from the chest burial chamber enemies and selling some rubies, I was finally able to buy something called dmitryEN, which functions to increase our carrying capacity. On day 21, I fully explored the Black Forest and looted all the burial chambers I found to get lots of Serling core ore which will be very necessary in the middle of the game, and didn't forget to plant some carrots before bed. On day 22, I went back to the Black Forest again with the aim of fighting again. And after defeating it, I immediately went home and made a full set of troll armor here. Continued by making new food, namely carrot soup and blessing. And after all the preparations were complete, starting from food, armor and weapons, it was time to fight the second boss in Valheim, in Elder. I brought several dmitryEN seats to the summoning altar and immediately summoned it. The jump in difficulty compared to the previous boss can be said to be very steep. This GR chicken boss is not only visually terrifying, he has 3 types of attacks. First, starting from the melee by stepping on us, the attack that shoots out a spray of roots that also has no small damage, and the attack that shoots roots from the ground. Although for me, all attacks from this position can still be easily avoided. Especially the root shooting attack. Just by grabbing behind the body and it's finished. The root attack from the ground just needs to move away. And the stomp attack is still really easy. And in this fight I used 2 main weapons, namely arrows and knives. It can be said to be very effective even though there were a few blunders, but in the end I managed to defeat him. After defeating the boss in Elder, I got 2 items, namely Swan Kealan the Elder. Well, I immediately took his head to the rocks or monolith and gained a new power for a second, where this power has the effect of increasing our damage when cutting down trees. Wow, very fitting. Day 23, I took it easy here. Starting from making additional chests, testing for the second power of the Elder by cutting down trees until night and replanting the tree seed. On the 24th day, I returned to the Black Forest to cut down the Fear Tree, which would be useful for many things. In the evening I didn't forget to farm. On the 25th day, I made a new portal in front of the house, the purpose of which was of course to make it easier to explore new places like the Monolith Stones, the Black Forest, and others. I also built a fence around my base to be safer when a raid occurs. On the 26th day, I ran out of suitcases, remember? So I had no choice but to go to the Black Forest again to mine the deposit suitcase. This was in the process of mining the deposit suitcase when suddenly there was an uninvited guest. I don't know where I suddenly had a good idea, man. How about I make this troll to play with Cooper to make him faster and start my epic plan? And who would have thought that this troll was more useful than he seemed, man. It was really nice to have a troll help me play with the deposit suitcase. After I finished destroying all the suitcases, I just killed the troll, bro. I don't know, thank you. And besides suitcases, I also mined some deposits. After that, I moved all the suitcases to the boat and went straight home. I was asked why I didn't just go through the portal. Because we can't bring things like tin suitcases through the portal. Well, after arriving home, I immediately melted the suitcases and tin. On the 27th day, I made more smelters to speed up the melting process. I continued by planting carrots. While waiting for the carrots and suitcases to be finished, I intended to sail again and look for a new place. And after a while, I saw a slightly spooky place. When I got closer, I arrived at the swamp. Well, from a distance I saw a damaged fort, man. So, I stopped by there where this deer cave would later be made into a second base in the swamp. But because it was already night, I quickly made a portal and went straight back home. Day 28, I continued to a new place, namely the swamp, and started looking for interesting things. Upon arrival, I was immediately greeted by a new enemy, the Draugr. Yes, although it was really easy to defeat. After a bit of exploring, I saw a very strange building from afar. After getting closer, it turned out to be a place of offering for the next boss, Bonemass. Wow, I just entered a new place and was told to fight a boss, right? Since I still haven't done anything in this biome, I returned to base and built a small, simple house with a foundation from the broken grave. Although it took a while, I liked the results of the house, simple, small, and inside I didn't forget to make a workbench and forge so we could build together in this swamp. It's impossible for me to go back and forth to the house to make something. Outside the base, I made several smelters to melt iron ingot later. On the 29th day, I started to focus my exploration on the swamp and found new things like leeches in the water and a new building which when I opened it with a somkey, turned out to be a sunken crepe. Inside this sunken crepe is the same as the burial chamber, but the difference is that it is guarded by different enemies and the items are also new. Well, in this sunken crepe I focused on mining and looking for iron ingots obtained from destroying mold scrap files. And in the sunken crepe I also got several chests with pretty good contents. After finishing collecting all the errands inside, I immediately went out, moved to the cart and returned to the base. On the way back home, I was followed by a ghost and eventually died. On the 30th day before returning to the swamp, I made a new, deadly weapon, namely the strikebreaker. After that I returned to the swamp. Luckily when I arrived at the swamp, the ghost was no longer visible, so I could safely retrieve my items. After that, I brought the cart I left behind and started melting the iron bed in the smelter. Because I felt like it was taking too long, I made a few more smelters here. And yes, the rest of the 30th day I spent just melting iron. With the iron I had, I managed to make full iron armor here. It's pretty big for its own defense. Wah! After making the armor, I decided to go home and sleep. On the 31st to 32nd day, I went back to the swamp and made an iron sword and banded shield. Then I looked for another sunken grip and started mining the iron ingots inside. After chasing the second sunken creep, I went back to the base to melt all the iron. And here I made an iron pickaxe to speed up mining again later. After that, I continued exploring the swamp to find new things, and in the process, I found many interesting things like this fire summoning place. And logically, fire is weak against water, right? So, I made the area near it covered in water and continued exploring again. And when it was night, who would have thought I met the ghost that killed me yesterday? Because I wanted revenge, I defeated it here. When I arrived at the base, I didn't forget to melt the water and continued sleeping. On the 33rd day, I went back to the swamp to make a new melee weapon, the Iron M, and a new bow, the Huntsman bow. After that, I went back home and made healing and poison resistance potions. Since these were still the raw versions, I had to put them in the fermenter and wait for 2 days for them to become full-blooded Raymans. On day 34, I started by improving my room by adding a king's bench and an armor stand. Then I went back to the swamp to explore again, and for this exploration, I focused on finding something called a turnip seed. Wow, it's quite difficult and rare to find. However, not long after I explored, I was surprised to find 2 turnip seeds close together. Wow, what a stroke of luck. Since I got what I needed, I went home and didn't forget to plant the turnips here. After becoming a farmer, I went back to the swamp and made a bigger boat that of course had a bigger carrying capacity because I would be carrying a lot of iron bars home with this boat. And after everything was loaded, I immediately sailed to my main base in Medowo. Although it took a while, but in the end, I finally arrived home. On the 35th day, after bringing iron from swamp, I started making new items like force tools and force below which were used to upgrade my station. And coincidentally, I needed quite a lot of stones, so I went to the Black Forest and started destroying people's houses. What a true satisfaction. After I got enough stones, I immediately made a stone cutter which would be very useful, like making a grinding wheel for upgrading the station. A more sophisticated fireplace called HCH, and I can put iron cooking on this herch. It doesn't stop there, I can also make the ground in the house into rocks. Yes, so it looks nicer. On the 36th day before the next boss fight in swamp, I started preparing as usual, upgrading my armor, making anti-poison and blood potions. Making another new weapon, the iron sledge. And towards the evening, I started sailing to the middle of the sea to hunt the serpent. Well, this serpent is a very scary enemy, whack, especially since we are not ready to fight him. The enemy is a large snake that can hit our boat, and its advantage is that it drops very delicious meat. Therefore, I searched here. After circling for quite a while, the life serpent finally appeared. Despite its terrifying appearance, I easily killed it here and got quite a lot of mid-serpent. On the 37th day after getting the mid-serpent, I immediately sailed home. When I got home, I immediately cooked this delicious serpent meat, and because there were several turnips that had grown, I didn't forget to make a space rack which functions to upgrade my sea drone to level 2. Now, with this level 2 sea drone, I can make lots of new foods like serpent 2 and muksek. And the rest of the 37th day I spent farming and cutting down some trees. On the 38th day it was time to fight the next boss in the swamp, Bonemass. Therefore, I started preparing by bringing some important potions, quality foods, and after that I immediately went to the swamp again and headed for the boss's offering here. Upon arriving there, an unexpected enemy suddenly appeared, the abomination. A wooden enemy with legs, though not as strong as it looked. Once there were no distractions around, I immediately threw 10 wither bonds at the summoning altar, and the boss Bon appeared. Yeah. Bonemass is a boss that is weak against bland weapons. Even though I know its weakness, it's not that easy to defeat this Bon. Besides its melee attacks that deal massive damage, it also emits a poison attack that will make it very difficult to approach it. Luckily, I have poison resistance, so I can reduce the effect, although not completely eliminate it. Besides those two attacks, this Bon also has an attack where it throws a cuckoo that is very annoying if left unchecked. After advancing, retreating, dodging, and hitting this Bonemass, Guy landed the final blow before finally being defeated. And as usual, after defeating a boss, we are rewarded with new items. And this time I got the Bond Trophy and Wishbone. Now, this Wishbone has a very magical function where when used, it will glow when detecting nearby treasure. But before continuing, I returned to the Monolith Stone or Forsaken Altar and got a new Forsaken power from these bones. The effect is the most OP in my opinion compared to the others where we can withstand slash, blur, and piercing attacks. For the rest of the 38th day I spent cutting down a lot of trees. On the 39th day I was still relaxing by cutting down some trees and making quite a lot of coal. On the 40th day it was still the same, I started farming to make coal. And that night I sailed to the sea to fight Saren again. On the 41st day, I started preparing again to go to the next new place. starting from providing forge materials, preparing food, preparing anti-cold potions so I don't freeze to death, because we will go to the warehouse where the mountain itself will definitely be very cold. And after that, I improved the teleportation place in front of the house by adding a simple building and also didn't forget to put a sign on it. Now, with a simple code I can change the color of this sign to what we want. On the 42nd day, I immediately went to the next place, namely the mountain. And here I headed to the nearest mountain from the initial spawn and brought all the items I needed there. Because it was getting late, I made a portal, went home, and slept. On the 43rd day, I continued on to the new location and finally arrived there. This mountain has its own uniqueness. Not only is the area uphill, there are many enemies, new items, and also just going up, I was immediately intercepted by this wolf. Although it deals high damage, it can still be defeated easily. Not only wolves, there are also birds that spit ice balls. Once I arrived in the middle of the mountain, I made a small camp and started mining enough obsidian. While exploring the nearby area, I accidentally found this big egg. When I tried to pick it up, damn, bro, it was no joke, 300. After getting enough obsidian, I decided to go home and make a tool shave to upgrade my workbench and make some obsidian arrows. Then the rest of the 43rd day I spent farming. On the 44th day, I returned to the mountain and started heading to higher ground. And on the way, I found a broken hut. Well, in the hut there was a chest containing onion seeds. Wow, this is a new food ingredient. And besides onion seeds, I've decided to build a mountain base in this go-go. So, I started working here. Long story short, I've finished building a simple house that is complete with a station, portal, and chest. And outside the house, I made a cart to carry my things later. After a day of working, I went home and slept. On the 45th to 46th day, I started leveling the ground in front of the house on the mountain. Because I need flat land to build a smelter on it. And after that, I started exploring using the gift I got from Bonemass. And who would have thought I'd find treasure very close to the buys? So I just dug straight away. And it turns out that the ground wasn't treasure, wow. It turned out that the contents were silver deposits. Well, here I'm trying to mine all the silver, right? And I have a quick way to mine it all at once quickly, which is to just dig in the surrounding area. And after there's nothing around the silver, just dig all the bombs. Then after that I made a path up so it could be transported using a cart even though it was a bit difficult here. And you can see for yourself, I managed to get 4 silver deposit stacks in one mining. Yes, after that I just melted all the silver deposits here. While waiting for the silver to finish processing, I started exploring the nearby area here. While I was having fun beating up wolves, suddenly I was surprised by this one golem. I immediately reflexively ult. Instead of running away when I saw the golem, I'm the type who doesn't run away when there's danger, so I tried to fight it here. Luckily I had time to use forging power, so the damage received wasn't that big, so I managed to defeat it here. Then I continued exploring. Suddenly the golem appeared again. Wow, even though I could still beat it, I was too lazy to fight this golem. It didn't end there, but a third golem appeared. Wow, that's enough for now. I chose not to fight the stone brain and returned to base. On the 47th to 48th day, I continued melting the silver deposit here and continued the exploration, and this time I found a very large cave. Wow. So, I tried to enter the cave. And this cave is called Frost Cave. Inside this Frost Cave, there are no wow items, only Fenris hair, Fenris cloud, and other useless items. But after leaving the Frost Cave, I was suddenly chased by a pack of wolves. I tried to fight them here. When I was almost dead, I reflexively ran away, and in the end, the raid was over. Compared to my friends at the base, I already had a lot of silver bars, so I started making new items, starting from a wall cap which has a really good effect. It can withstand the cold temperature on this mountain, so no need to use cold potion anymore, right? And to make armor from this silver bar, I need a chain obtained from the sunken crep in the swamp. So, I went back there to look for the chain. Day 49 to 50. After getting the needed materials, I immediately made new items such as a new bow weapon, namely Dragger Fun, Frosner weapon, arguably the best melee weapon. Silver shield and wolf armor chest, wolf armor leg. Well, only the helmet is missing. The problem is to make the helmet we need a trophy from Draugr, a blue bird enemy that shoots ice balls. So, I started hunting the Draugr here. And after defeating so many Draugrs, I still haven't got it. Gosh, even though I spent 2 full days hunting this mon, still haven't gotten it. Oh my, instead of getting it I died here. Day 51. After dying because of the wolf, I couldn't accept going back to the mountain. And when I got there, there was no one there, so I could easily retrieve my items. And yes, after that I continued looking for Draugr and prayed that I would get the trophy quickly. Although at the end of the day I died again because of the critty wolf. Day 52 to 54, I plan to return to the mountain by foot carrying iron. Because I needed iron to make a silver sword. So I was forced to walk to the mountain, even though in the end I managed to reach the mountain safely. When I arrived at the base, I realized that the silver bars were gone. Damn, oh no, I was forced to look for another silver deposit here. After finding it, I repeated the mining process, which was the same as before in bombs, then became a courier, smelted all the silver deposits, and finally I managed to make the silver sword weapon here. And after that I went home to farm and sleep. Day 55 I started hunting Draugr again to get his trophy. And after killing dozens of Draugrs, I finally got it here. Wow, so happy, right? I immediately returned to camp, and after wanting to make the helmet, it turned out I needed 2 tropical Draugr. Bros. So here I started hunting for this blue monarch again. And luckily it didn't take long. At night I shot Draugr, who I don't know how many times. And after seeing that he dropped the truck, I immediately returned to base and made the Draugr helmet. Here, on days 56 to 57, I became a courier again. And this time my goal was to bring enough silver bars to the base in Mido. Yes, you should already know that it wasn't short. Just imagine running from the mountain to the forest, which was not close. It took a long time, and it all paid off when I arrived at my main base by immediately making a voucher table, which is used to upgrade to drone to level 3. With sea drone level 3, I can make ice cream. Wow, great! Because the sun was about to set, so I prepared to hunt the serpent in the sea by making obsidian arrows. After that, I immediately set sail and hunted this serpent. I just had time to hunt for the jackpot this time, but the second game ended up being discounted because it was already midday. Like it or not, I just have to stop hunting. And because the distance to the base was far, I stopped by the nearest island to make a portal to home. And also because I forgot to bring the materials to make the portal. Like it or not, I have to wait a while for this black forest. Look for Gradef I-10, look for Burial Chamber to get 2 short Linkor, and there's only one ingredient that I haven't got, namely 10 fine, and even then in the black forest there's no finey wood, only in Mido, so I'm exploring to see if there's any. While exploring, I accidentally passed by this new place, WA, namely Plain. Wow, because I didn't want to die, I just left there, and also because I couldn't find anything to do, I might as well explore the mountains, who knows what might be there. When I was on top of the mountain, I saw a white tree which was definitely fine. So, I just decided to go there and enter the planning area. Just as he had managed to cut down several trees, suddenly a goblin passed by. I'll try to fight it, right? Bah, the damage couldn't be done, so I decided to just go from there to the mountains again. And luckily I returned safely to the boat and I was forced to sail home. Day 58 is still too far from home. I choose to step aside here again, and luckily this time it was right in Mido. I cut down some fine moods and made a portal to the house to go home. When I arrived at the base, I immediately cooked all the serpent meat I got and made several new foods such as serpent shrimp. And without wounds made a blood recovery potion. And in the evening I sailed again hoping to get serpent meat, even though in the end I didn't get anything. On the 59th day, I intended to go to a new place, namely PL and the mountains that I had explored there. On his way, a sudden storm fell. What surprised me was that a serpent appeared. Wow, what a blessing this pious child is. Yes, I'll kill him. Not bad extra bits. And what made me even more surprised was that there wasn't just one serpent that came out. Not long after it appeared again, I quickly killed it so it wouldn't respawn like before, right? That night I was still at sea trying to get to a new place. Suddenly I was approached by a serpent. That's great, wow. 3 snakes on the same day. Work. And when I finally arrived at the place, I immediately made a portal, went home and cooked all the snake meat I got. On the 60th day, I returned to the Black Forest and headed to the mountains there. After arriving at the top of the mountain, I suddenly saw this building, wow, which turned out to be an altar or place to meet the next boss, namely Motor. So, since I've found the altar, I have to make a small cam near the altar so it's easy to teleport, right? So I started working as a, here again. Day 61 to 62 I started looking for items to subscribe to this modern boss. What turns out is that we need 3 large eggs that I wasted at that time. Because of the weight, I threw it away, right? So I started looking for the eggs again on the first mountain. It took quite a long time to deliver these eggs. It's not a problem that it's hard to find, but the bottom is really heavy, so I had to go back and forth. But in the end, I managed to put 3 eggs. Well, before summoning them, I went home first and prepared as usual, bringing potions, food, and taking a short break. After everything was ready, I went back to the altar and summoned the current motorcycle boss, H. Right after summoning the modern boss, a rock enemy appeared that really made me emotional, which I should have focused on defeating the modern boss. Now I also have to find a way to defeat this rock. Luckily, the golem was killed by Draugr, which made me focus again on fighting the modern one. Motor, aka S-Power, is one of the hardest bosses in Valheim in my opinion. It has 3 variations of attacks, starting from close range attacks, attacks that can freeze us, and the most painful is the attack when he flies when he sprays crystals at us. Wow, if it hits, the damage is no joke. In this fight, I used a sword as my main weapon and arrows when the Nogais was flying. The key to defeating this boss is knowing when to attack, dodge, and run. With the skills I had throughout the fight, I dealt quite a lot of damage to this modern, although there were occasional small mistakes. A few minutes passed, the modern's health was low. I bravely drank a potion, ran towards the motor, and launched a final attack that ultimately killed him. After defeating the boss, I got 2 new items, Eikthyr and Trophy. In this model, I immediately took it to my second altar and gained a new ability where the effect is that if used, the wind direction will be in our favor while sailing. This will be very useful when sailing to explore new areas. I started from days 63 to 66, taking it easy. I started farming first so our food supply would be constant. After that, I just remembered I got a Eikthyr from the modern boss. I used this to make an artisan table. With this artisan table I can make good items. Well, to make new items I need silver bars. So it's time to deliver again. Literally from the top of the mountain down the cart filled with silver bars to the base in the forest, so one experience I don't want to repeat again. Because it was incredibly complicated. But in the end I managed to bring the silver bars to the base safely. After bringing the silver, it turned out I still lacked iron bars. Yes, I went back to Sunken Creep and mined again, melted again, transported all the iron again, and then made new items like a stone oven, which is useful for making even better quality food. And at the same time added iron cooking station 1. On the 67th day, I had enough of that unaesthetic bed. So, I made a new bed here, the dragon bed, and also I changed the wood into stone tron. Continued by making some windmills that function to make flour and some spinning wheels to make thread. And the rest of the 67th day I spent farming again. Day 68, it's time to explore a new area, namely Plural. Yup, the one I ran away from earlier. This time I really intended to explore there. After a long journey, I finally arrived at PL at night and I was immediately greeted by Fulling, a stupid goblin-like enemy. Where are people? Where are they going? Instead of dealing with stupid creatures, it's better to make a portal to be safe. Day 69. Yep, arriving on day 69 I started exploring this new area. Just a few meters, I found a new item or new fruit, namely cloudberry. Then I saw a fairly large animal from a distance. I was just messing around, right? Hey, he got angry, man. The animal's name is Lox. When killed, he drops good items like locks and lock belts. Well, because the items I got were good and useful, I hunted 2 more here. Right after hunting logs, a mosquito tried to kill me. Well, be a little reasonable, bro. If mosquitoes can hunt me down, that's impossible. Continuing my exploration and I found a small village which turned out to be inhabited by Fulling Walk. And because I didn't want the family to immediately attack me, I shot from afar and finished them off one by one. What surprised me was that thing was releasing fireballs. Luckily I'm good at rolling. After finishing the Croco Caraco, I, with full awareness, hit a big hit. Not only is he big, it turns out that Ghoul Cooling is also fast at running, let alone his attacks. The dog made me nervous. Even though in the end he died in my hands. After that, I tried to loot the village, right? Suddenly there was another DJ. And I forgot to mention that when we kill fulling we get the black metal scrap item. The function is the same as the previous ingot, and after defeating all the fullings, I just went after the village. And I got lots of useful items like fooling totems to summon the next bus, barley and some flags. Well, I happen to really need this barley and flag, where barley is for making flour and flag for making thread. On the 70th day after getting the barley and flag, I immediately planted them so I could double them, because these two items would be really needed. After farming, I took all the carts to Fulling village to collect all the black metal scrap that I hadn't collected yet, because if I brought them all straight away, I would get sore, so I had to bring the cart. After exploring around, I found a tower which turned out to be Fulling's base camp. So, I killed them all and took the loot. Then, I immediately went back to the boat to put the items. After that, I continued hunting for some locks and collecting cloudberries. On the 71st to 72nd day, I focused on cutting down trees in the main base, especially trees that gave fine wood. After cutting down the muscle tree, I immediately made a new chest made of iron bars to increase its capacity. It did take quite a long time, because sorting items is one of the activities that makes me sleepy. But it all paid off with the neatness of the items you stored. For example, like this. After completing a boring activity, I continued the adventure. Yep, here I look for another PL and left the barley and plug plants to grow. Luckily, this new plan wasn't too far from the old one. As usual, I made a portal, chest, and continued exploring. Not far from where I was stuck, there was another Fing village, which could be said to be quite large this time. Yes, you already know what happened next. I started defeating the caves one by one and fought Mr. Fulling too. Entering the 73rd day, I had just finished leveling the Fulling in the village. What took a long time was the enemy attacking the group, especially this big Yao man who was the most troublesome for him. Although all of that was paid off with the items in the village. But it didn't end there. Right after fighting with the Fulling, I was suddenly attacked by a pack of wolves. What the hell? I can't see people calm down for a bit. And I got a lot of good items in the village this time. Black metal scrap, barley, and quite a lot of flags. And after that I moved PL again here. The move wasn't too far, just in front. But whatever, I set up a portal and continued exploring. And not long after exploring, I found a building that I saw for the first time. When I approached it, it turned out there was a stone that pointed to the next boss's location, namely Yagluth. Even though the place was a bit far, but it was better if we could know where it was, right? Day 74 to 78, I returned to the place we originally planned to visit and started harvesting barley and flags here. Well, because I already had quite a lot of barley and flags, I immediately went home to put the flags into the spinning wheel and put the barley into the windmill. While waiting for the items to be ready, I went back to the PL and lifted all the black metal scripts onto the boat to be taken to the next place location, which was near the summoning altar. So let's start sailing here. Arriving at night, I found a great spot to build a new base in this plan. Well, the base was very close to Fulling village, but too far for them to notice us. So, I started working here. And after a full day, I finally finished building this substandard house. But the important thing is that it fulfills its function as a house. Wow. Just finished building the house. There were uninvited guests. There was no friendly garden at all. How could the owner of the house be killed? That's crazy. And also outside the house I made a farming place for barley and flux. That night after returning home, it turned out that the flux had become thread and the barley had become flour. Although I still couldn't do anything with them. And because there was a slight miscalculation where I was supposed to bring iron bar to make a new smelt, I forgot to bring it. Like it or not, I had to build another boat to sail there. This is so lively, bro. Which started sailing from the evening of the 75th day until it was already evening to the plin. That was also the 76th day because the place was so far away. Yes, when I arrived there, I immediately made several blast furnaces whose function was to change black metal script into black metal. On the 77th day, I returned to the main base to make new arrows, namely needle arrows. And after that, I started slaughtering the Fulling in the village. Again, it took quite a long time to eradicate all the fulling in the village. Especially the big one with the mage. What a combo that ultimately made me die here. After the response came back, I made quite a lot of black metal, and it turned out I could make a new weapon here, namely the black metal sword, and its axes. And not only that, it turns out this thread is a material for making good armor even though it uses iron material. Well, this armor is solid armor. One set has a defense of 78 without upgrading it, right? Very cool, wow. Because I had made new armor, I went back to PL, got my things, and started slaughtering again. Instead of fulling coming, I was attacked by wolves again, bro. I was starting to get sick of seeing this. But in the end I managed to slaughter the goblin village and loot all their belongings. And it also turned out that near the village there was a pool of black water, which turned out to be tar. So, I took some. Entering the night, all the black metal scrap I had was made into black metals. So, I carried everything to the boat and started my journey back to the main base. Well, on this journey home I managed to defeat several serpents whose meat was quite good. After a fairly long journey, I arrived home on the 79th day, and the first thing I did was make Pock and Pen to upgrade Kron to level 4. Continued by cooking all the serpents, making them half serpents. And with the flour I had, I was able to make LCK spy and bread here. I cooked it by oven. After finishing the cooking, I returned to the plain, which this time my goal was to go to the next boss's altar, Yagluth. Upon arriving at the summoning altar, I had a cool idea where I would make a rest area and a portal right under the altar. Since the boss wouldn't be able to bother us, I made it here. On day 80, I had finished making the rest area and the teleportation portal. Here, I went home to prepare things like making pudding blocks, preparing useful potions like healing potions, stamina regeneration, and most importantly, fire resistance. While waiting for the potions to be finished, I made a hot spring in my drawing. Ask what for? Yes, for bathing. And also a stain armor to put all the armor I had made. Entering day 81 to 83, the fire resistance potion I had made was apparently finished. Therefore, I immediately went to the summoning altar with fulling totem 5 and immediately summoned the boss there. This skeleton-shaped boss is one of the hardest bosses in the Valheim game. It's really annoying, having 3 attacks that are so ridiculous, starting from a fire blast to summoning meteors. Wow, just to attack a small human, summoning meteors is crazy. And the problem doesn't stop there. This is attacked with arrows without any feeling. When approached, it gets angry and spits out fire. Even those with fire resistance hurt, let alone those without. Well, here I have to really calculate when to go into attack and avoid the meteor attack. Because if I get hit even a little, you can see the bat. Yes, I am very patient here to wait for the opportunity when to hit and avoid his uniform. Although most of what I do here is YOLO directly hit from close, because you can still reduce the fire damage with fire resistance. At one point I felt so pro by stupidly charging through the hot fire to attack until I didn't realize my fire resistance potion had run out, which ultimately led to my death here. After responding back, I quickly drank the potion I left at home and also the food. Then I went back to Yagluth's place. Well, what was beyond reason was that I had the chance to sit under the hot skull boss. Luckily I wasn't attacked, whacked, and managed to get some blood. And after that I immediately took the items and continued fighting against this fighting boss. And after quite a while I went back and forth against this boss. In the end, the Yagluth soul bomb has been the feared. Yup. In the end, I managed to fight this skull boss from hell even though it didn't go quite smoothly. After defeating the Yagluth boss, I got 2 new items, namely Ton Spirit and Yagluth Trophy. Well, I immediately went to the second altar and got a new power from this Yagluth, where we can reduce 50% damage from fire, ice, and lightning attacks. And for the Thor Spirit, this can be made into a Whis Fontaine which functions to bring Whis at night or when it's raining. And also, it turns out that after defeating the Yagluth boss, the merchant Halder was selling eggs, so I bought them here. When night fell, I tried to catch some Whis here. Continued with making a chicken coop, because apparently we can take care of the eggs which will eventually hatch into chickens. Day 82 to 83, I started by making a new item here, namely WHPS like witches of course for lighting. And after that I went to the Black Forest to loot the burial chamber and look for a lot of coins to buy more eggs. Because if there is only one chicken, how will it lay eggs, right? So, day 82 to 83 I just looked for as many ruby amber coins as possible. After collecting them, I immediately bought a second egg and put it in the co-op. After finishing the chicken egg business, I just did the usual things here, starting from upgrading weapons, farming, making new chests, bathing, and yes, sleeping. Day 84 it was time to head to our final destination in this adventure, where I sailed again from PL and looked for the next new region. Although it took a while, finally it was in sight from afar. Yep, we entered the most dangerous region in Valheim, namely Mislim. Right after docking, I immediately cut down a new type of tree in this bay, namely Jack Drazzle wood, where new recipes appear when I get this Jack Drazzle wood. And I didn't forget to make a portal to be safer. After cutting down a new type of tree, I tried to go home and make a black metal pickaxe and return to Myland. The next thing I did when I entered a new area was exploration, of course. In just a little way I immediately found a new plant, namely Jun Puff. And when I was having fun cutting down the tree, suddenly a new enemy appeared, namely Seeker. It was immediately 1 star. My reflex was to jump, right? Wow, I took damage that was 1 star beyond reason. Moreover, there were 2 of them, right? Although I managed to survive here and get new items from the enemy, namely Seeker meat and... Continuing to explore again, I found this little rabbit whose loot was very useful. A few minutes passed, I explored in this mislanding. Suddenly I saw a black skeleton that was quite large. And my high was there was a skull. Walk, here I'll mark it first, okay? After that, I went back to the portal and destroyed it to move there. When I arrived at the black skeleton, I heard a sound like an alien and suddenly I was attacked with fire. Who knows where? Luckily, I managed to create a portal and immediately escaped from that place. After feeling safe, I ran and quickly entered the portal. Day 85 to 86, I dared to return to Miss Land sneakily. And luckily I thought the enemy had left. So I carefully placed the west lantern in the nearest area so that it would be bright. In the process of placing this lantern, I accidentally found a strange building. When I checked inside, there was only one secker. And after putting it inside, it turned out I only got black marble here and nothing else. So I went back to the black skeleton and started mining from its brain. Well, inside its brain, it turned out there was soft tissue. After getting all the soft tissue, I didn't forget to mine some black marble here. After mining, I immediately went home and made new items here, namely mortar handle, to upgrade Sea Drone to level 5. After that, I returned to the island to explore. And in this exploration, I found a lot of things like glowing tree roots and fought a lot of seers on the way. Until one point, I finally saw what enemy had attacked me at the beginning. It turned out to be an enemy similar to a jellyfish, but the creepy version is really annoying. And also I found a building that was guarded by the same. When I entered, inside it turned out there was a door leading into a room. Well, just in case I made a portal near the door and immediately entered. Which turned out to be the room I entered was an infested mine. This infested mine itself is quite a dangerous room, but it is worth the reward. Where in this infested mine I got a lot of new items such as black core, royal jelly, breaker fragment, and of course a new enemy, namely Seer's Holder, whose attacks are beyond reason. Yes, this enemy took quite a long time to kill. Not only that, I was surprised by the 2-star Seer. Bro, Amamir, even a 1-star is like that, let alone a 2-star. Even though I patiently managed to kill him here. After exploring the infested mine, I got a lot of black cores and other items. So, I decided to go home and make a new station, namely Black Forge along with Black Force Wooler. And the first thing I made from this Black Force was the Arbalest weapon, because long-range play is more important in Mland, and also I really like the weapon. And don't forget to make the Karapchi bolt for the Arbalest mission. With the new Arbalest weapon, I immediately tested it on the red jellyfish enemy. And the result was, I was right. I made this weapon at the beginning. Very useful. Wow. Day 86 to 90, when I was having a nice walk, I found a building that turned out to have a lot of the Vergers inside. Where the Vergers won't attack us if we don't hit them first. And because there were also items I needed from inside the building, I made a portal nearby. After that, I immediately looked for enemies to bring to the building so that the Verger would attack. After going back and forth looking for enemies, I finally managed to destroy the Burger's room. And got what I wanted, which was the Verger extractor. Well, with this I can make a sub-extractor that is useful for absorbing energy from this glowing root. Besides, I found another black skull. I mined all of it for the soft tissue. After I waited a few minutes for the sub-extractor, it was finally full, whack. So, I took it and got a new item, namely saw. With this saw, I went home and made a new station, namely 2-ear ravenry. And I didn't forget to put an iron gate on the edge of the erenry so it wouldn't damage other things. After that, I immediately put in the sap and soft tissue. After that, I just waited for the results to come out. And after I waited a few minutes, finally I got a new material, namely Riven Ear. Because it was still very little and couldn't be anything, I decided to go back to Mistland and change locations. When I arrived at the other side of Myland, I quickly made a portal and immediately returned. When I got home, Riven Iram had already made a lot of them, and I finally managed to make my current weapon, the Miss Walker. Not only Miss Walker, I also made a new shield, the Carapace Buckler. On days 91 to 92, I returned to Swan, the goal of which was to collect as much iron scrip as possible. After that, I melted everything on the spot. After it became an iron bar, I brought it back home using the boat. On day 93, I started making end-game armor, the carapace armor. And luckily, I managed to make a full set here. Continued with making useful weapons, namely the demolizer, the skull and hattie weapon, and the Himanifal weapon. Besides new weapons, I also made new quality foods such as the uncooked Ms. Supreme and Saloth. After that, I immediately returned to Mylan to look for another invested mine. As soon as I entered, I was immediately attacked by a jellyfish, although this time I easily defeated it. During the exploration process, I found another glowing root. I took the time to make a sub-extractor and now I just need to find the invested mine. After a long exploration, I finally found this invested mine. And at the entrance of the room, I was provided with a lot of good items. And not only that, this demolizer weapon is very useful for finishing off a group of enemies at once. On the 94th day, I was still in the same invested mine looking for useful items such as black and most importantly, the seal breaker fragment. And here I was surprised because who would have thought I found a stone that indicated the location of the final boss in this game, the Queen. But a new problem arose. The location is far away, bro. I'll reach 100 days before I can do it quickly. After feeling that there were no more useful items in this room, I immediately left and returned to the base. Well, in this base I had time to make the ultimate healing potion to prepare for the last boss fight, right? And I also made new stations again, namely the Gilder Table, Run Table, and Unfading Candle. Its use is to upgrade the main station. With the Gilder Table, I can make a new cap here, namely the Feather Cape. This particular cap has a very special effect, eliminating fall damage, bro. When else will you be able to be Batman in this game? Besides the feather cap, I made a magic weapon here, namely Stuff of Protection, although I couldn't use it because I needed it. Day 95 to 98 I focused on looking for something called a seal breaker fragment at the invested man located in the nearest M Island area. After getting at least 6 seal breaker fragments, I started sailing towards the location of the final boss in this game, namely the Queen. And I spent 2 full days on this sea journey because the location was so far. Well, when I arrived at the location, I didn't immediately go to the summoning location. Instead, I looked for another invested player to get the seal breaker. After jailing one invested player, I decided to stop by briefly at the summoning location of the final boss in Valheim, the Queen. When I arrived there, I was faced with a large gate that required a seal breaker to open. Since I still needed a few more seal breakers, so I made a portal nearby so it would be easy to teleport later, and continued looting some invested main again to get the seal breaker fragments. Day 99 to 100 after getting enough seal breaker fragments, I returned to base and made a seal breaker. After that, I prepared to fight the final boss in the Valheim game, the Queen. After preparing starting from food, potions I finished making plus additional bomb weapons that I would also use later when fighting the boss, I was ready to face the ending of this game. Therefore, I went in front of the gate and immediately opened it. After the gate opened, I immediately entered here. Once inside, I started exploring the nearby area and killing the small enemies that would later be a nuisance if not removed. Then, I started climbing up slowly. And I saw the boss, the reflex I jumped and used for second power. The Queen is simply a big version of the Seeker. Most of the boss's attacks are one-shot long-range attacks. He unleashed Ludak and several minions. The boss's attacks themselves can be said to be still predictable. What made it difficult for me was when she summoned the Rocco's Seer Seraph. That really made me lazy. Some of the Queen's attacks were still easily handled by me. For example, when she unleashed the yellow Karakot, I just had to equal. What made it difficult was when I wanted to attack with a melee weapon. During the ongoing battle, the 100-day changed. Wow, I had to finish this quickly before entering the 101st day. So, I tried my hardest to defeat this boss. Wow. The longer the fight went on, little by little I memorized the timing of the Queen's attacks. I gave quite a lot of damage. At one point, I had to go home to repair the damaged weapon and return to the arena. After rolling around and hitting this millipede, it was time for me to end this fight with the demonizer weapon. Boom. Boom long the Queen. Finally, after 20 minutes of me hitting this giant seer, she finally fell. So far, I think this is the most difficult boss for me to fight. Besides not being used to the attacks, there are also technical issues, namely lag. But oh well, we managed to defeat the final boss in Valheim, the Queen, right on the 100th day. And for the last time I returned to the second altar and hung the Queen trophy here. Okay, WA. That's my journey for 100 days in Valheim, fighting terrible enemies and defeating all the bosses in this game from start to finish within 100 days. And what do you think about my first content? If you have any suggestions, please comment in the comments column below. So that's all the content for this time, because our goal has been achieved, which is to survive for 100 days in the Valheim game. It's time for me to say goodbye. And before I end the video, for those of you who enjoy content like this, comment below what game you want to request to be made for 100 days. And also, before you go, you can leave a like on this video so others can see it. And don't forget to subscribe to this new dmitry channel, so I'm enthusiastic about making new content in the future. I'm dmitry, goodbye. See you in the next video.